And good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. Coming up tonight on Perspectives, we tell one brother's story about how he's really making a positive contribution in the community and in the world of literary form. After really going through some setbacks in life, he's been able to turn his life around, not just turn his life around, but really turn the whole world of really publishing around. His name is Relentless Aaron. He joins us now in studio. Many people are familiar with his works. He's got many books out there. You can find him out there on the street. He's an author. He pushes his own stuff. You find him out there. He's selling his stuff. He just recently signed a 14-book deal with St. Martin's Press, and he's had some popular titles such as Push and The Last Kingpin, and we just join him now. He joins us now, I should say, on the Set of Perspectives, and second time joining us, but it's good to have you.
What it do? What it do?
Good to see you, man.
Right, good to see you, man.
You've been making things happen.
Yeah.
And over the last year, things have been busy. I mean, the last time we came, we talked about, Push. We talked about The Last Kingpin. But, since then, you're on newspapers. You're on the Time magazine.
Yeah.
You got things going. Talk about the latest efforts and what's been happening for you.
Well, it's definitely been a growth. It's been a maturity for me. As many of the viewers know that are familiar with my story, having seen it in the Time magazine and the New York Times, I spent 7 years in prison where I was able to amass 30 novels. And I wrote those manuscripts and grew them as soon as I came home into books. Mm-hmm. And now at this point, we have struck a major publishing deal, the biggest in history, 14-book deal with St. Martin's Press, especially for a new author. And now I have a couple of movie deals. Bill Duke is directing and producing this beauty here called Push, and Mario Van Peebles and a group called Key Films is doing The Last Kingpin to take New Jack City, I guess, to the next level. So I'm real proud of patting myself on the back, as I said earlier, of my revolutionary ways. And it's not just on the streets anymore. We're in Walmart and Borders and Barnes & Nobles and all the major bookstores now. You can find my new books. So. But
you're making that push because, most people who have their stuff that's out there, in the stores, the Borders, the Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that, they pretty much can sit back and say, listen, my stuff is out there in stores, we'll let it work for itself. You, on the other hand, you decided to take a totally different spin. While your stuff is out there, and praise God it's out there in major chains, you still are out there on the street doing your thing. And people can find you out there autographing your books and selling them. Talk about why you continue to roll on the street when, by some people's measures, all right, I made it.
I have to attribute that to my work ethic. I really do. I do not tire. I'm a juggernaut when it comes to seeing my goal through to completion. It's one thing to get the books in the stores on the shelves. It's another thing to get the books from the shelves into the reader's hands. And what I've noticed is that if a book or a magazine is on the shelf in the stores, it's not in the reader's hand. It's not in their possession. Mm-hmm. They don't replenish themselves instantly. So if you go into a store and you see a stack of books, that means they're still there. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to see them there. I want to see them in readers' hands, and this is all in accordance with my march to be the best-selling author in history.
Mm-hmm. That's your goal? That's
my ultimate goal. 32 books now. I wrote a couple since I've been doing the push, and I have dozens more to go.
Talk to us about when you say you spent 7 years behind bars. Many people who are incarcerated don't make constructive use of their time, admittedly. You, on the other hand, go into writing. You spend a lot of time writing. You come out with these novels. Talk about your mentality while you were behind bars, because while some people use it as a time of wasting time and quote-unquote doing time, you were quote-unquote doing something with your time.
There's two parts of that. Number one, I recognized the environment that I was in the moment I got in there, and I kind of lived by there's an old African fable about the vultures and the hummingbirds in the desert. The desert is a deadly place, but you can be a vulture and go after carcasses, or you can be a hummingbird and go after honey. But in the desert, those two those two exist. They coexist. They don't go after one another. And I decided that I was going to, for the most part, be a hummingbird. Granted, when they slammed the door, I had to adapt, and I had to go through adjustments from fights to be determined about what it was I was going to do. I had to determine that I was going to decide that I was going to stand for something and not just fall for anything. And then on the other hand, it was the discipline. The discipline that I had to have was that I assumed in my mind that I was a writer, that I was going to be a best-selling author. And I marched that into existence when that time started. When the door slammed on me, I wrote 4 or 5 songs a day. And I wrote 4 or 5 songs a day for a while until I got to 300 songs. I sent a few of those songs to a friend of mine that was in music. He sent them back, which was really inspiring, it turns out, although at the time it was discouraging to me. It's like, I can't win a Grammy in here, so therefore let me write books. And so I started writing books. It took me a year to write the first book, and then I got better and better at it. And I kind of run like sports psychology. I've mastered this. And so I feel like, I say this before, I feel like I'm Michael Jordan, and I'm going for the rim, and my tongue is hanging out, and it takes me now 2 weeks to write a book, and every book, knock on wood, is a slam dunk. And so I was real focused while I was in there about making every moment count. Instead of having tension relieving activities, lifting weights, and I did some of that, but not excessively. Talking on the phone, crying on the phone, talking to friends and people in there about what I was gonna do or what I used to do. I instead got with goal-achieving activities, and goal-achieving activities for me was writing, was reading, was studying, and I had to read 1,000 books. You can't just sit and write books. You have to know what you're doing, and so I had to read books about writing. I had to read other books that were the masters of their craft, the Sidney Sheldons, the Stephen Kings, the James Pattersons, and I basically mastered my craft.
And so you're reading these books while you're incarcerated.
Right.
And so you're developing your craft while you're there.
Right.
And then when you get out, you've got these books already lined up, ready to walk. You're ready to walk out. So take me to the place of publishing, because immediately you don't get any help, and for a while you don't get any help. So now you've got to become a self-publisher. How'd you go about that?
You know, I came home with $10 in my pocket, and I had some help. I had a wife who was standing by me, and I had friends that were standing by me. They embraced me to a degree. And when I came home, the day after I hit the streets, I had a copy of Push in my hand, a finished book. I had printed 50 copies. I had done 5 months in the halfway house, and in the halfway house, I spent that out time publishing this book. While I was in the halfway house, I had a laptop computer that I borrowed, and I started to do the publishing process on that laptop. And when I was out, I did my research in terms of formatting, in terms of doing my cover, in terms of pricing, where I was going to get the book printed. And the day that I hit freedom, so to speak, I had a printed book in my hand. I can remember the last day that I was in the halfway house. I was so proud of myself that I had a book. This is all that I worked for. All those guys that were hating on me in prison, that started fights, that just didn't understand my vision. This meant the world to me, and to this day, this is my bestseller, Push. This is the one that Bill Duke is directing into a major motion picture. So it's this very telling book here. It's not just about a story about a thug who grows from nothing to become something. This is about me, DeWitt Gilmore, who left that past behind and transcended his challenges to become Relentless Aaron.
Talked about the storyline, because the storylines, you know, you talk to people who read your books and they're like, this is tight. You know, he's got, you're hitting places where people definitely want to know, because by the fact that when you go out, your books are sold out, you know, so you're hitting people with the storyline. What's the concept behind your storyline? What are you thinking about when you're creating these, when you're creating these different novels?
When I first started, that very first book I wrote was called Topless. It was, my dad owned the Topless Club in the Bronx, and it was a very popular club. And sports stars and celebrities came to the club. And me, I just was kind of living La Vida Loca. I mean, in the sense that I could wake up when I wanted to. I didn't have to maintain a job. My job was to go to the club and kind of look and make sure everything was all right, you know, and just be there. And in that environment, I've kind of absorbed and soaked in all that I saw, and that helped to create that first book called Topless. And so that was a sort of a memoir that I turned into a murder mystery, because actually one of the dancers at the club was murdered. And so I took that and I kind of bounced into something greater than just a story and just a one-hit wonder. And that's when I clicked my heels after that year-long testimony in that book. I wrote a book. Let's do it again. And ever since then, it's been that, like I say, that juggernaut, that sports psychology where I did it once, now it's second nature. I just do it like riding a bike.
Where you are today, you've been on Time Magazine, I know the Journal News,
New York
Times,
ABC World News.
Okay, major media. When you're writing your book, Behind Bars, are you saying to yourself, I see myself on major media?
Not at all. I mean, I was in the belly of the beast. People were getting killed around me, stabbed around me. I was at Hummingbird, and I was buried into my work, taking my past experiences and burying them into characters. And you see, when you're assuming that lifestyle, that new lifestyle of a writer, of an author, and you can see that this means more than just me, this is going to outlive my lifetime, then every minute of the day is spent such as an author. So I thought and walked and talked and ate and slept books. And I basically lived inside of that body of an author. So think of John Grisham in prison, or James, you know, they've never been there. You know, think of them in prison. I said to myself, gee, I'm in a place where 90% of books and stories in the world are built on deceit and crime and punishment. So I'm here. I lived this before, and I'm living it now. So I can't do anything worse than a Grisham or a Patterson or a Sidney Sheldon, because that's what they're writing about. So I'm living this. So now all I need to do is get my writing skills together. So I basically learned the writing craft, and I set out on my fortune, so to speak.
Want to come back and talk a little bit more about where your books are going and how your message is being told, not just out in the free world, but in the world behind bars. I want to talk about that. Relentless Aaron is our guest in studio, a brother that's making a contribution to the community in more ways than one. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we return right here on Perspectives.